Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is daf pay. Since we end on daf pay bet, so we have literally just we're in the last 3 days of Maseches Kiddushin. So very, very exciting. And to be finishing not only Maseches Kiddushin, but all of Seder Noshim. And we'll then, at least from uh, Siddharim, the sixth Siddharim of the Gemara will have been done with the first three, and we'll move on to Nezikin and Baba Kama, God willing, on Shabbos. There's no vacation from Daf Yomi. There's only more progress and more learning and more zchuyot that are associated with that. So we are on the last three words of Ayin Tedem Bet. But before we do that, I'm going to share my screen and summarize the Mishnah and the Gemara that we have learned at the end of the day yesterday. So yesterday we concluded with the Mishnah that detailed four different rules. Rule number one, we believe a man who went overseas with a wife to say, this is my wife and these are her children. The point being that the husband's going to be able to, he's, even if she doesn't necessarily look the same, if he says that this is the same wife that they left, we're going to believe him. And as a result of that, the fact is that the investigation that we would have done when the couple got married to recognize the legitimacy of each of them, that recognition will continue with the wife who comes back. And when we say that these are her children, the Gemara that we learned yesterday, we said that this is dealing with young children who clearly cling to their mother. So we're talking about, toddlers, a little bit, maybe a little older. But the point is that they clearly identify this person as their mother. That is going to be sufficient to say that she is the mom. And we're going to then qualify that potentially in the statements of Reish Lakish and the debate between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan in today's, as we open today. Okay, so that was rule number one. On the other hand, if the man returns only with children, saying my wife died and these are her children, then he's going to need to bring proof that these in fact are her children. And Rashi explained that we don't need to bring proof regarding the wife's lineage because the couple because the couple was married here. It should say here. I'll have to fix that. And so as a result, that's already been checked out by the people in this location. So as a result, if you prove that in fact the children are the children of the mom, so then you've proven that they have good lineage because we know the mom's lineage and we know the dad's lineage. So that's case number two. If the man returns with a different wife saying that he got married overseas and these are her children, well, again, we're talking about young children who are clinging to their mom. So as a result, the man, we're going to, but the woman has not been checked out by the rabbis and by the community here. And so as a result, even though they may have been checked out in the community somewhere else, that community may be a community that has tainted lineage. And so as a result, in order to confirm that the children have the right lineage, we need to confirm that the mom has the right lineage. But because the children cling to her, we don't need to prove that the children are in fact her children. We'll believe the man when he says that these are her children. Okay, so that's rule number three, and rule number four is sort of the neither rule. He comes back, without a second wife, but he says that she died and these are her children. So we don't have the mom, we don't have any evidence of clinginess. So as a result, the man is going to need to prove two things. He's going to need to prove the proper lineage of the wife who passed away, and he's going to need to prove the fact that these children were born to her. And those are the two pieces that you're going to need in order for him to be able to say that these children have the proper lineage. So now that we have that background, we're going to pick up again with the discussion of the degree to which we rely on children clinging to their mother to create a presumption of her motherhood. Beginning with the last three words on ayin tet amabet. So amaresh lakish, we say, as we turn to Pei Amud Aleph, Lo Shanu Ella B'Kodshe Hagavul. That when we talk about the fact, according to Reish Lakish, then we talk about the believability, the strength of the presumption that this woman is the mother. That only is going to help us with respect to holy things that are eaten out in the borderlands. What does that mean? Rashi here clarifies further to samchinan akruchin, that we rely on this clinginess, ella b'kedushin, ella l'kachei only for that kind of holy things. Im kohenhu, meaning that if he's a kohen, ochlim b'kachei he can eat these holy things that are able to be eaten outside the Beit Hamikdash, and that refers to truma. Mishahevi raya al ha'ishazu shehik shera. As long as we can know that the woman herself is kosher, l'kahuna somchen al habanim hakruchim achareha, then we'll rely on that, the fact that the children are clinging to her. Lomar banah hein ve'ein cholin, that they are her children and not some children from some other source that are therefore profane and not able to eat truma. So that's the point that we're going to say. However, however, when it comes to the yichus, and Rashi says in the next Rashi, third line on Pei Amud Aleph, im yesh bahen benot enan nisot l'kohanim. But when it comes to the marriageability of any daughters that the couple would have, even if that daughter was clinging to the mother, so we have that presumption that it's her mother, that would not be enough for that daughter to marry a kohen. You actually have to prove the fact that this is this woman's daughter, and that this is the combination, and therefore, as a result, is in fact has good yichus, and therefore is allowed to marry a kohen. Rabbi Yochanan disagrees. Rabbi Yochanan Amar afilu b'yochsen. He says that even with respect to that last option, it says, as Rashi says in the second line of narrow lines of Rashi on Pei Amud Aleph, samchinan achazaka shehein kruchin aleha, that we will rely on the presumption that exists because they are clinging to her, and so as a result, those children would be allowed to marry a kohen. But as the Rabbi Yochanan Tameh, back into the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan follows his approach. The meaning we see that this, in fact, is Rabbi Yochanan's approach, that we will rely on a presumption. Okay, the Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Chia said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Malkin al chazakos, we will give lashes based on legal presumption. Soklin al visorfin al chazakos, we'll stone people, we'll give people skila, and we'll burn them. We'll put the molten lead down their throat. That for as punishment in appropriate cases, we'll see those cases in a moment. But ve'ein sarfin at truma al chazakos. But we won't necessarily burn truma based on a legal presumption. Again, all three of these cases will now be explained. Mm-hmm. So let's take a look. So Malkin al chazakos karav Yehuda, that when we say that Rabbi Yochanan is going to allow us to have lashes based on a chazaka, we're talking about a situation like Rabbi Yehuda. What the Amar of Yehuda, huchzaka nida b'shechenuseha, that Rabbi Yehuda says that a nida can be set up. We can understand that, in fact, there's a presumption that this woman is a nida based on her neighbors. What does that mean? So Rashi, again, as often, helps us out. This is about 20 lines down in the narrow lines of Rashi. Huchsaka nida b'shchinuseha, shira'u shchinuseha, that her neighbors saw her. Shehi hayom ha'isa melubeshes bigdei nedusa, that it used to be that a nida would wear certain clothing that during the course of her nida menstruation period, because one is to let other people know, because at the time there was real concern about the impurities, and so as a result, people would want that information. And second, also possibly because she didn't want to get her nice clothing dirty, so that she'd have specific clothing that she'd wear. So there are two aspects to that, but the bottom line is that people are seeing that she's wearing the clothing that shows that she's a nida, and so as a result, doesn't and so as a result, bala loka aleha mishum nida. As we go back into the Gemara, if in fact she this is 1, 2, 3, 7 line now 7 and 8 lines down in the Gemara, that the husband will get malchus. It's a violation of the Torah to have relations with a nida, and so as a result, he will get lashed. And even though we don't know for 100% sure that the woman was in fact a nida, it's just based on her clothing. We don't have any physical or witness evidence to that fact. That is sufficient to cause a punishment of lashes. And what about the second case? So that was case number one about lashes. Soklin v'sorfin ala chazakot kidarabba bar baravuna. And we'll give skila and burn somebody in connection with a presumption based on the teaching of Rabba Baravuna. Da'amar Rabba Baravuna, because he said, Ish v'isha tinok v'sinokes shehigdilu b'tocha bayis. If you have a man and a woman and a boy child and a girl child all living together, well, what's the presumption? The presumption is that the man is the dad, the woman is the mom, the boy child is their son, and the girl child is their daughter. And so, even though we have no witnesses, no other evidence to the fact that that is the relationship among the people in this household, they will potentially result in skila, and they will potentially result in streifa. Well, how does that all work? Thankfully, again, Rashi helps us out. So now we're basically just below the midline of Rashi. Niskolan zeh im baha ben al haisha. If the son comes together with the mom, again, a parent mom, we don't know for sure that this is the mom. Niskal haben aleha. Then the son will get skila as a result. Mishum ba al imo bihi alav. And similarly, she will have as a result of him. So the point is that they will both get skila if it's the mom and the son. How about what's the case of Nisraf and Zalzeh? Well, that again, Rashi continues in the next line. Nisraf and Zalzeh, im ish al habas debito bisreifa. That when it comes to a daughter, if a man has relations with his daughter, so then he is subject to the penalty of being burned. And so as a result, that's the situation. And so we have concluded that we see that actually, notwithstanding that all we have is a legal presumption that these four people live together, they could be in fact killed as a result of stoning or burning as appropriate. Okay, so now and now we have a quick aside that notes that this actually happened, because Amar Rebbe Yoshimon ben Pazi, Amar Rebbe Yoshua ben Levi, Mishum Bar Kapara, that it was said in the name of Bar Kapara, Masa be'isha Shabbat Yerushalayim v'tinok murkav la al ksefa, that a woman came to Yerushalayim with a child, a boy, riding on her shoulders. V'higdilaso, and she raised him. V'uva but then when he became an adult, they had relations. V'heviyum lebeitin uskalum, and they were brought to the court and to Beitin, and they were stoned. Lo mipnei shebina vadai, not because we knew for sure that this boy was her son, but because he was clinging with her, because he was holding on to her. So as a result, we are going to presume that in fact this woman is the mom and the boy is the son. And therefore, even though we don't have any visual or documentary or witness testimony evidence, we're going to follow that presumption. Ve'ein sorfin truma ala chazakot. But there's a situation where you might have a chazaka where we won't burn truma. So what's the story with that? Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, because we have another debate between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan, that Reish Lakish says the following: Sorfin ala chazakos. He says, no, we do burn truma based on a chazaka. Rabbi Yochanan Amar ain't sorfin, but Rabbi Yochanan says we don't. And va'azula tamayhu, and they are consistent with their opinions elsewhere. So you have some dough in a pile on a table, and now you see that the child sitting next to the pile has dough on his hands. Well, what will we naturally suspect? We will naturally suspect that this child was involved in touching that dough, even if they were told not to do so. And Rashi tells us, if we take ubotzek biyado, 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 16, 17 lines up in Rashi, biyadua shenato menaisa, we are going to assume that in fact this child must have touched the dough. Now, what don't we know? Well, we're usually talking about Tuma and Tara. We don't know, according to Rashi, whether or not this child is Tameh. For reasons that we can go into it at different time, but or at least discuss maybe at the end if there's a desire to do so. Rabbeinu Tam in Tosos offers the opposite view. He says, no, it's not that we know that the child touched the dough and we're unsure whether the child is tameh. We know that the child was tameh, but in this situation, even though the child has dough on his hands, we're not sure that the child touched the dough. And the reason is because of the nature of the Gemara's case that we're going to see in a moment. That's why Rabbeinu Tam suggests that. Okay, but in any event, so what's the story in that situation? Rabbi Meir mitaher v'chachamim mitamim mipnei shedarko shel tinok l'tapeach. Rabbi Meir says that it's tahor because we don't know for 100% sure, and we're going to explain Rabbi Meir in a moment. And the chachamim say no, it's tameh because children tend to grab things and touch things, and so as a result, we can presume, especially when they have the dough on their hand, that they are in fact touched it. My time with Rabbi Meir, and we ask, what's the story with Rabbi Meir? Meaning, doesn't he agree that it's pretty clear that this touching happened? So kasava robe tinokos metavchen umiyot ein metavchen. After all, and then we answered that he thinks that most young children touch things, and a smaller number don't touch things. So the isa b'cheskas tahara omedes, and the dough had a chazaka of purity associated with it, meaning before anything happened, we knew that it was a tahor dough. Usmuch miuta lechazaka Israele ruba, and we combine the miut, the small number, the minority of children that don't touch things, with the majority of with the chazaka. Excuse me, we combine that with the chazaka that the dough was pure already. Israele ruba, and therefore we will diminish the strength of the majority. So v'rabbanan miuta keman delei sadami, and the rabbis say no. When you have a miut, when you have a minority, it's as if it's not there. And indeed, this is consistent with Rabbi Meir's position elsewhere, that in general we worry about a minority, according to Rabbi Meir, whereas the rabbis say no, we don't worry about a minority. Ruba v'chazaka, ruba adif. And so as a result, all we have is a majority on the one hand and a chazaka on the other hand, and a ruba, a majority, will beat out a chazaka. And so as a result, according to the rabbis, that's why it's going to be tummy. And Amar Reish Lakish, Mishum Rabbi Oshia, Zu hi shesorfin aleha es hatruma. And this kind of situation. So now, if it's not just that it was tahor dough, but it was tahor truma dough, and so as a result, because it was truma, now it became tameh, it needs to be burned, and we'll burn it, even though you're not allowed to burn something that is only uncertain about its status, you have to leave it and wait. And so as a result, that truma will need to be burned. Whereas Rabbi Yochanan says, Amar Einzu, Rabbi Chazaka Shesorfin Alad Truma. We do not, in fact, burn. And so this is the third of the three cases, right? Rabbi Yochanan said that the case number 3 is that there's a situation of not burning truma, and that this is the situation. But there is, in fact, a situation where there is a chazaka, and we would burn the truma. And what is that situation? None. We have it in the following brisa. The brisa says, even though the Tanan is usually used in connection with the Mishnah, the Masoras Hashas suggests that this is actually should be Kedetanya because it's actually a brisa. So what does the brisa say? Ushratzim utzvardim mitapelin sham. If there are shratzim and frogs. So frogs, of course, we know from the various plagues, sardim, but shratzim are different kinds of small animals that are considered a tameh. Not only are they tameh, but any limb that falls off of them will also make things tameh. Now, a frog, on the other hand, despite its being a small animal and might otherwise be considered a something that would make things tameh, and it's usually when we think about shrutzim, we think about creepy crawly things, but no, frogs are not a category of shrutzim and do not make things tameh. So now what happens? We are in a place where there are animals, the small animals that are tameh, and frogs that are leaving their limbs around, meaning that that pieces of them are being found all over the place because they're dying or being killed. Maybe you have a cat there or something. Anyway, the point is the nimzu chatichos ba'isa, and now we've found some of these pieces in the dough. Now you must imagine how poor people were because they're trying to save the dough here. So the point is that even though you and I might have thrown out the dough, they're trying to figure out, is the piece of animal that we see here from a sheretz, and therefore the dough is tameh, or is it from a frog, and therefore the dough is tahor, and we can just throw away the frog leg and eat the dough and bake the dough. Now, im rov shratzim tmeya. Now, if most of the animals in the house are tameh, then we will be concerned that the piece of the animal that we've got here is from one of those animals, and it's tameh. Im rov tzvardim tahora. But if most in the area are the frogs, well, then it's going to be tahor. Now, Rashi helps us to understand, because after all, what's the difference between this situation and our situation of the little boy? Because let's go through and show the parallels. In the most recent situation, we have a majority of shrutzim legs, and in the child situation, we have the majority of children touch the dough. And in the both situations, we have the dough being tahor, having a chazaka of tahora. And yet, in the shrutzim situation, Rabbi Yochanan says burn the dough because a majority of the shrutzim, a majority of the limbs are from shrutzim. And in the child situation, we say don't burn the dough. So what's the difference? So Rashi helps us out. Fourth of the wide lines of Rashi, imrov shrutzim. Im habayis mechzekes liyot shrutzim mitzuyim sham. If in fact the house has a presumption that most of the animals there are the shrutzim, so then yoter mitzvardim, more than they are frogs, tameh, then the dough is tameh. Avli saref, even to burn it. Because in this situation, it is a situation where the majority of the item is here and present with us. Mm-hmm. Meaning, what is our world for calculating majority? The world that we have for calculating majority are the legs and limbs that are in our house. That is a defined world that is in front of us. We see the majority. We see all the possibilities. And therefore, we will rely on the majority to burn the object. Aval hahi de tino. But in the situation of the tino, we don't have every infant around us. We only have one infant here. And the presumption that we're making about this infant is based on the broad world and not based on anything in particular that we have in front of us. And so therefore it's ruba delesa kamanhu. It is not in front of us. We don't see all of the children touching stuff and being clear that that's what's going on. And so as a result, Rashi says that this distinction between whether it's a majority in front of us or a majority not in front of us is what's clear. What's causing us to burn in the dough in the context of the shrutzim, but not in the context of the child. Okay. And we have a brisa that supports Rabbi Yochanan's perspective against Reish Lakish. Because what does the brisa say? Tanya Kavasi Rabbi Yochanan, Shnei Dvarim Ein Bahen Da'as Lishael. There are two things that don't have intelligence, but so that we could ask them questions. But we made it as if they had intelligence, meaning it's as if we asked them a question and they answered us with the majority answer. And what are those situations? Tinok va'od acheres. There's the case of a child and another case. Tinok ha'da'amr. The child case is our child case of the dough with the child sitting next to it. Va'od acheres maihi. What is the other case? Isa b'toch habayis. There's dough in the house. V'tarnagolim mashkim tmeim sham. And there are chickens and liquids that are tamei that are right there. The nimtzu. And now what do we find as we turn to payam a bet? Nikurim beisa. We see that the dough has been pecked by the chickens. Now, what's the question that we have? The question is, did the chickens have liquid from those liquids? So we know that they ate. Now, often when you eat, what do? You drink. And so as a result, the question is, did the chickens drink from the tamei liquid? And did that tamei liquid come onto the dough? If it did, then the dough would be tamei as well. If it did not, then it would not. But we don't know the answer to that. Now, most chickens are probably going to touch the liquid and then, especially since we know that they touch the dough, are going to have touched the dough. And so we have essentially a chazakah that is sufficient for us to say that the dough is tamei, and yet we conclude, as we pick up with the fourth word on payam a bet, tolan lo ochlin v'lo sorfin. We suspend it. We don't do any kind of judgment. We don't burn it and we don't eat it. But the bottom line is that this shows that we don't burn not only this chicken case, but the other case, because we said that the two cases were tied together, the small child and another case. This is the other case. And we say that therefore the small child case, what does our answer? We don't burn it. We wait and see what happens. And that, of course, is Rabbi Yochanan's position. Reish Lakish had said we do burn it. So this shows that Rabbi Yochanan is in fact correct. So Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi lo shanu ela b'mashkin levanim. Now, Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi further qualifies this whole discussion because that situation is only when the tamei liquid is white because it's the same color as the dough. And so we can't tell whether or not the dough was touched by the liquid. If it's red, well then im isa denakir meidan yadia. Then if you can see that it was that the red is on the dough, well then we know that the dough was made tamei. But if not, then not. V'dilma bilatinhu isa. Maybe the dough sort of swallowed it. It absorbed the liquid, and so as a result, even though the liquid was red, the dough still remains, the color of dough, that slightly off-white color of dough, depending, of course, on the nature of the bread that you're making. And so as a result, it's not necessarily, even if you don't see anything, maybe in fact it is in fact tameh. So Rabbi Yochanan, dabar zeh shama beribi uferusho lo shama. And so, as Rabbi Yochanan says within a sort of an exclamation mark, did Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi hear this and not give an explanation? Here's the explanation: Lo shanu elav mashkim sululim. When we talk about a red liquid, we're talking about a red liquid that's clear. That's where we have the question. Shebevua shaltino nikarba, that you could see the reflection of a child in it. Aval mashkim achurim, but if you have some kind of red cloudy liquid, low, then we will say that if you see the red, the dough is tameh, and if you don't see, then it will be tahor, because we have clear method of evidence. And so as a result, that's going to be the situation. And again, that all concludes us with the idea that Rabbi Yochanan is the one who is correct, that in fact we follow, that we don't follow the chazaka in order to burn truma in the case of the child with the dough. Okay, new topic for us to discuss. And for the rest of today and for tomorrow, we will be talking about the concept of yichud. The concept of yichud is the fact that a man and a woman should not be alone together unless they're married, or a father and a daughter, or a mother and a son. So, and let's take a look, and we all see the details right here. Lo yityached adam im shtei nashim. A man should not be secluded with two women. Aval isha achas misyachedes im shnei anashim. But a woman may be secluded with two men. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Af ish echad misyached im shtei nashim. Even one man may be alone with two women. Bisman she'ishto imo, as long as his wife is with him. V'yoshen imohem befundaki mipnei she'ishto mishamarato. And they can even sleep together in an inn, because his wife is going to watch over him. Meaning, an inn meaning the same room. Obviously, if there's a door and that's a lock between them, that would not be an issue. Okay, misyached, continuing on, adam im imo ve'im bito. A man is allowed to be alone with his mother or his daughter. V'yoshen in meo b'kiruv basar. And they are even allowed to sleep together in, with their, bodies touching, even without clothing on. But once the son or the daughter has grown up, that then they have to be wearing clothing if they're going to be sleeping in the same bed. So, my time, what's the reason? Why do we say that there's a difference between men and women? So Tana Devei Eliyahu, it was taught in the Academy of Eliyahu. Now, this is actually likely a reference to a collection of brisos that Eliyahu taught the Amora Rav Anan. We saw this in Ketubot, and so that would be one possibility. Or alternatively, it's a collection of brisos taught by somebody named Eliyahu in his yeshiva. So those are the two different potential viewpoints on what is meant by Tana Devei Eliyahu. But in any event, what did he teach? That women are more easily convinced to do something. And so as a result, that is why one man with two women is going to be more of a problem than one woman with two men. So minani mili, how do I know about this prohibition in the first place? So Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Yishmael remez liyichud min haTorah minayin. How do I have a hint to this in the Torah? Shenamar ki yisischa achicha ben imecha. that in connection with, this is in Dvarim, Parak Yud Gimel, Pasuk Zayin, that if your brother, the son of your mother, is going to convince you, and this is talking about convince you to serve another god. V'chi ben im aim mesis ben av eino mesis. Now, why did the Torah specifically reference the son of your mother and not the son of your father? After all, the son of your father is just as likely to cause you to try and sin. Ela lomar lecha ben misyached imo v'asr lehisyached im kol arayot shebetorah. That this is telling you that actually a son is allowed to be alone with his mother, and all other situations are prohibited if it is some kind of relationship that is detailed and prohibited in the Torah. So pashte dekra b'mai ksiv. Now, but on the other hand, what? Fine, you've given me a nice drush as to a hint to know that a son and a mom are allowed to be together, be alone. But how do I know? What in the world is the reason in the pasuk itself that the focus was on the son of your mother and not the son of your father? So Amar Abaye, Lomi Bai Kamar. The Torah is telling us a situation where we know one case and we don't know another case. It's certainly, and not maybe something else. So Lomi Boy Ben Abdus Sunny Lay, that when it comes to the competing sons of a father who are going to have to compete for the inheritance, and they often dislike one another. So for Ayatzle Eitzus Ra'os, and so one of them might give the other one bad advice and say, why don't you go worship some idols? So Ella Afilu Ben Aim Dulo Sanile, even when it comes to the sons of a mother, where there is no reason or less of a reason to dislike one another because they are unlikely to have competing claims of inheritance, because each of them will inherit through their father. So Ema Tsayasele, maybe you might think that you should listen to such advice because after all, there's no reason for him to say something bad to you. No, don't listen to them. Everybody can give bad advice. Kamash Malan, even that advice should be ignored. Okay, so now the question is, does our Mishnah contradict a position that Abba Shaul has in a brisa? So, Nema Masdisim Deloka Abba Shaul. Maybe our Mishnah disagrees with Abba Shaul. Why? Because what does our Mishnah say? Titania. Because what does Abba Shaul say? Excuse me, in a brisa. Titania, we learned in a brisa. Kol shloshim yom yotzi b'chek. In the unfortunate situation where a child dies within 30 days, the nature of the funeral is a different one, and you could just have the child carried out by the mom. You don't need a special bed. You don't need any kind of anything special. But the point is, v'nikbar be'isha achat u'shnei anashim, and the child can be buried by one woman and two men. Avalo be'ish echad u'shnei nashim, but not by one man and two women. Now this matches this. What we've just seen matches our Mishnah. You can have one woman alone with two men, but you can't have one man alone with two women. And so that would be sufficient to bury this unfortunate child. So Abba Shaul says no. Af be'ish echad u'shtei nashim. Even one man and two women. So doesn't that show that one man and two women does not constitute yichud and is permitted? So no, you don't need to say that in fact Abba Shaul disagrees with our Mishnah, because afilu tema Abba Shaul, you can even say our Mishnah goes along a lot with Abba Shaul. B'sha'as aninus tavir yitzrei, that in the moment of that anguish, of aninut, of that immediacy of being in mourning, tavir, it's broken yitzrei, a person's inclination. People they don't have the spirit to do anything. And so as a result, that's why there's nothing to be worried about. The Rabbanan, if that's true, why do the rabbis say, why do the Tanakama in that brisa say that you cannot bury with one man and two women? So Savrele ka Rabbi Yitzchak. They must think like Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak, because Rabbi Yitzchak says, Mayis onein Adam chai gever al chata'av. This pasuk from Eicha says, "For what shall a living man mourn, a strong man for his sins?" How do we read that? The point is that Mayit onain, we're going to say that refers to aninut, right? That's that. The point is that indeed when it turned to mourning, that even at the time of mourning, so then Yitzro mitgaber alav, his evil inclination can still take a hold of him. Meaning chai geber al chata'av means that the yetzer hara, the evil inclination, still has a chance to be stronger and cause him to sin. So for Abba Shaul, 1 second, if that's true, if that we have this drasha, why doesn't Abba Shaul read the pasuk that way? Kiksiv hahu b'misraim al midosav ksiv. No, that pasuk is written with respect to somebody who has complaints against God about what his lot in life. And this is what that pasuk is telling us. Ma Yisraim al midosav. What right does a man have to complain about what his measure is in the world? V'chi gavar alav chata'av. Has he been able to prevail over his sins? Of course not. So dayo chayim shenasati lo. So he should be happy with the life that God has given him. So now we have an alternative reading. So why don't the rabbis like that alternative reading? The Rabbanan kiahu ma'aseh dahi itza. The rabbis say you might have an interesting read, but we know of a story. There was a story with a certain woman to have a uvda ba'apikte, that she took a child out and engaged in an inappropriate situation. Now, in that situation, that child was actually alive. And so as a result, the point is that it's not about the Tanakama. So now we're rereading the Tanakama. It's not necessarily about that we're worried if in fact there was a dead child, but we're worried about the possibility that in fact this is all a ruse. And so as a result, that's why we won't let one man out with two women, because we're concerned that in fact there's no child there whatsoever, and this is all a method of having some alone time. Not a really great idea. Reminds me of the episode of Seinfeld where they go in to watch Schindler's List to be alone together. But in any event, I won't go into that any further. So we are deep in the details of the halachot of yichud. So, but if you want, and if you're looking for more details, you're gonna have to stay tuned for tomorrow's daf. We'll pick up with the two dots on the bottom of Pei Amud Bet, God willing, tomorrow. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Maybe another Seinfeld.
Yeah, maybe I'll have another Seinfeld episode. I didn't expect to have that one. It just came to me at the end there. All right. Have a great day, everybody.
Yeah.